Hey guys, Killer Knives here. I have a DPX Classic Decade M390 and Micarta and titanium today. I did the unboxing last night, and when I did, I just noticed, this has probably been sitting in a box in a warehouse for a good amount of time. As I had mentioned, I haven't seen this knife on any website. So a little bit of run around this morning trying to get this video started. Typically I use called an iFixit, and it comes with tons of different bits, and it's free spinning, which makes everything really easy. But unbeknownst to me, this takes a very specific Allen key, and it is a 7 64ths Allen key. So just really quickly, the way I like to do my disassemblies is I have a little container of rubbing alcohol, 90%. I cut, this is 2 small paper towels that I cut in half again, and then I cut into 3s. And then some Q-tips, and in this case 7 64ths Allen keys, which I don't typically have on hand. So we'll just jump into this, start disassembling this, and it should be pretty easy. It's only 4 screws, and I was fiddling with this a little bit last night, and it was very tight. The blade is, before I do this, the blade was a little off center. It looks a little more center now that I'm loosening the pivot, but it's a little off center. The pivot was very tight. The detent is very strong. Let's just pop out this back piece here. I generally line up everything in the order I take it out, and I usually start front to back there. You can see I have it here. And just take all of these out, look inside. I did notice quite a bit of like caking and rusting around the pivot, and this is Teflon washers. So I think that speaks a lot to the time this knife was made, because most people then doing bronze washers nowadays, or they give you the option of Teflon, but Teflon isn't coming standard. So my guess is this knife is more than 5 or 6 years old. It's just a little harder to get this undone with Allen keys, so just bear with me. So we were in the hardware store, and we're like trying to figure out if it's metric or US, and I keep telling the guy, I'm like, you know, the knife is USA made, the knife is USA made. And you know, who knows, she didn't really care too much or believe that that had anything to do with the knife, but turns out USA made Allen key and USA made knife. So another thing is, this tool I do believe is to remove the glass breaker in the back, and then also this little wedge unit is obviously not very capable in real life situations. So I'm pretty sure that's to wedge off the handles if we have an issue here. We'll see, find out very soon. And as you can see, just pop this out. Lots of corrosion. Rust. Ooh, it's nasty. Very surprised. try and protect this new mat. Just put that down really quick. And like I said, I think I have to use this to remove the glass breaker. Oy. So they give you, I mentioned there's a little screw inside of this. I believe that's just a replacement for the glass breaker if you don't want to have the sharp point on it. But I like to have it just in case you get in a car accident or something that's seems like it's would be a useful thing in an emergency situation. Very tight. We're gonna see if this comes in handy here. And it does. Okay. It's a little gunky. It's getting on my fingers. I'm gonna wipe my fingers really quick. Don't wanna spread that all over the rest of the materials of the knife. All right. So, you know, I could be like really upset about this, but I would consider this normal wear and tear, guys. If you're gonna have a knife, and I'm assuming they put a little bit of knife oil or something on this before they sold it, and no one ever bought it, unfortunately for them. But if you're gonna do that and not use your knife, you got to be really careful, because it will corrode your knife eventually. You got to be careful with that. So we're just gonna wipe this off. Like I said, paper towel, rubbing alcohol, get it nice and cleaned up. You know, if this was like a brand new knife, I would be a little more concerned. But I got this knife for a little over 200 bucks, I think. $210, M390, Micarta, titanium. It's a pretty sweet deal. I'm not gonna complain about it sitting in the warehouse too long. I'm gonna wipe this up. Get all that rust off. We'll clean the whole thing off. And then I like to keep Q-tips too, for a little more fine work. It really helps to get in between things. So in this case, we will clean directly in between where the pivot was. I think this is also a really good cleaning video, because most people don't usually see a knife like this. I see a lot of disassemblies. The knife is in perfect condition. And we're gonna make this knife go back to perfect condition. So it's helpful to see it actually in a dirty state. We'll take this, the blade, paper towel, rubbing alcohol, wipe all that down, get in the nooks and crannies here, the back side. And I can feel there's like just like old oil all over this blade. So that's definitely what it is. And M390 being a very corrosion resistant metal, I think speaks volumes about how old this knife is. So I didn't do any research on how old it was. I just got really excited that it's M390, and I bought it. M390 and Micarta. Seriously, hardly ever see that, so I think it was a good pickup. All right, so you can see it has a very interesting lock face. It's not, you know, it's not very smoothed down, which actually might be a pretty good idea. It might help the wear and tear at the end of the day. Might help it wear down slower. All right, so we got that cleaned up. Now we have these Teflon washers that are pretty filthy. And I believe the big one is for the back side. I'm sorry, the front where the micarta is, and the other one is in the back near the lock face. So just get these cleaned up a little bit. I want to really get them nice and clean, and then we're going to use some knife oil. And this knife was really, really tight and really hard to open, so I'm looking forward to seeing the action on it after this. Could be really nice. All right, Teflon washers, easy to clean up. That's why a lot of people in the work industry, the hard use work industry that use knives, use Teflon a lot. So I have blue Loctite. We'll use that on the screws. Usually just put a little over here. I don't have the stick of Loctite. I have trouble finding it here in my neighborhood, so oops, it was a little bit too much there, but it's okay. Pretty cheap stuff. All right, so let's get I use this Kershaw knife oil. I don't know how people feel about that. I've had no issues with it. I actually really like it. Works pretty well. But yeah, so let's put a little bit. I'm gonna zoom in a little bit for the rebuild here. Put a little bit there. Just pivot, pop the pivot back through. Might want to steal a little of this to get the pivot through. There we go. Get the pivot through, get the washer on, and put a little bit more oil there, and get the blade on. Okay, there we go. A little more knife oil. The large washer in the front. A little more knife oil at the bottom here. All right. And we should be able to pop this scale right back on. Let's see. A little tough, but snapped it right in there. Gonna need some kind of way to get this pressed in there a little more. There we go. All right, so everything's back together now, and we will just put a little bit of the Loctite on here. You don't want too much, just a little bit at the tip. And don't worry guys, you know, if a little too much oil gets on there, or a little too much Loctite, you can always wipe it off. It's not a big deal. You don't want to like make a mountain out of a molehill with stuff like that. All right. So I don't like to screw everything all the way in. I generally only put a little bit of the screw in at a time, just enough to set it, and then later I will fully set the screws in place as I get the knife back together, not to create too much pressure points in one particular area. Okay, and I suggest you guys do the same. It's a little bit of mechanics. You can avoid a lot of accidents that way. If you over tighten it and then you put something else in, it could create splitting or a little aggravation on the knife itself. So hopefully I did this right, and I can get this, pretty easy. So the clip goes on. This is a little tough to get on camera, but the clip sits there, and then you take the carbide tip, get that in place. Okay, use your little DPX tool here. I'm going to screw this down all the way. It's pretty tight. Alright, because this is not going to affect anything but the clip. Alright, so it's tight, and the rest of the knife is ready to go. I'm going to start tightening in the backside, and I'll tighten that down nice and tight. And I do wish I had the free spinning tool, but I don't. So get these all tightened up. Shit. All right, one more, and then we'll adjust the pivot so that we get a nice clean action. All right, these are nice and tight, Loctite on them, so this won't be slipping anywhere. The pivot's pretty tight, so let's see what it's like right now. It's very tight, so very tight, almost like when I first got it. So loosen it a little bit. Very tight. So you want to play with that a little bit, see what tolerances you can get at. Zoom out a little here, get this on the camera a little better, and there we go. Nice. We'll just check for some blade play. No blade play, zero blade play. Loctite on the pivot, so this will seize up, and well, the screw will seize up into the other side of the pivot and be locked in place, and we'll have a nice clean action on the knife. Cool. Well, that's Disassembly DPX HEST, classic decade, M390. I'm going to rub this down with a little bit of mineral oil later, but enjoy. Hope that was helpful, and I'll see you guys soon.